Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. With me now is the assistant comment editor of the Telegraph, Olivia Utley, and the political editor of WalesOnline, Ruth Mosalski, to take us through those newspapers. Welcome to both of you. So to the front pages then, let us start with The Guardian. The British plan to send channel migrants to Rwanda is top story for The Guardian, which reports that the scheme has been widely branded as inhumane. Inhumane is also the word used, as you can see, on the front page of The Mirror. The Daily Mail quotes Boris Johnson as saying he won't let the plan be wrecked by what he calls objections from the left. The Telegraph leads with the story of a British man fighting in Ukraine who has been captured and paraded by Russian forces. Sky is not showing the Russian picture of him in captivity, in line with the Geneva Convention on Prisoners of War. The Sun leads with news that Harry and Meghan have flown to the UK to make a secret visit to the Queen and Prince Charles, the paper says. Well, the Star again turns its ire on the Prime Minister for breaking lockdown rules but refusing to resign. Reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. Plenty more of those papers still to come in. But let us go to our guests now, Olivia and Ruth, who join us. And not surprisingly, the Rwanda plan, Olivia, is highly controversial. Does it have benefits as far as you're concerned?
Well, it's very interesting. I was speaking to some polling experts today who were saying that immigration, illegal immigration in particular, is the one issue which is still very much split along traditional left-right lines. And you can see that in tonight's papers. You've got the Guardian sort of slamming it from every possible angle. There's no mention of any possible benefits. And the Mail, which we'll talk about later, explaining why the policy might work and might be a good thing. The Telegraph's view on this is that again and again, it's very, very clear that people in Britain do want illegal immigration to be curbed. People in Britain are very worried about those illegal crossing routes where people are risking their lives in the Channel and want something to be done about it. And Priti Patel, with this, is at least trying to do something serious about it. She does at least seem to have a plan. Whether that plan will work is another issue. I mean, in Australia, offshore processing has worked, and it has massively brought down the numbers of people coming to Australia illegally. Rwanda seems to be a relatively sensible choice. I think there's quite a lot of sort of racial stereotyping of Rwanda, which is quite surprising, especially from the left that we've seen today. And actually, you know, Rwanda is much more than just a sort of byword for genocide. It's a thriving nation. So I think there's some of that today, which has been a little bit odd. But I think there are definitely merits to the plan. And I do think it's just very interesting the way this debate has become so polarised down sort of traditional left-right lines. And so all we see in The Guardian is the criticism of the plan without real explanation of what's going on here.
Yeah, well, the Rwanda, you might say, and it has been argued today, is hardly democratic. The last election in August 2017 was won by the incumbent by 98.8% of the vote, which is kind of unheard of in democratic elections, is it not? Ruth, what about you? And we've heard a lot of the criticism that it is inhumane. Practically, what do you do? How do you march people onto aeroplanes and then effectively abandon them there? So what's your take on this and whether there were alternatives to this plan?
Yeah, I think Olivia's right. People may want something doing about it. It does come out top. I think that the poll in today was that Conservative support for this was something around 59%, whereas Labour support is about 15%. So clearly it's on party lines. But I just think, I don't think it's fair to say it's racial stereotyping. I think it's the fact that this is a plan that's come from nowhere. Lots of people today were saying, why Rwanda? Why this country? Priti Patel said today, you can't compare this to the Australian scheme. It's a completely different thing. So I take Olivia's point. There is lots to be talked about. I think the reason lots of people have come out so strongly on this is quite rightly there are so many questions. How much is it going to cost? Simon Hart, the Welsh Secretary, was talking about this morning on the broadcast round, and it was 120 million he was talking about. I'm not sure anyone thinks it's going to cost that. Is it also right that it's costing £5 million a day, or is it sustainable it's costing £5 million a day to put people up in hotels here at the minute? No, it's not. So yes, something has to be done. Is this the right plan? We don't know that yet. And part of the reason we don't know that yet is because it's a plan that's come seemingly, you know, Priti Patel can say it's been negotiated for months. I think Simon Hart said the same this morning. But for lots of us, it's come from, why are we picking this plan? Why is it one-way ticket? Why is it single men? There's an awful lot of questions to be answered first.
Well, it was. I mean, this idea was mooted several months ago, wasn't it? You know, Albania was thrown into the mix, and certainly the Prime Minister said today that this had been negotiated with the Rwandans for some 9 months. So it's as if to put down the idea that it's not part of Operation Save Big Dog, Olivia. You know, where has this come from for the government? Has it come from watching what has happened in Australia, or is it simply exasperation that they can't get anything out of the French and the European Union to tackle this properly?
Well, I think it's a mixture. I mean, Nick Timothy, Theresa May's former advisor, is one of our columnists, and I speak to him a lot. And he's been interested in this plan for a long time. It was mooted back when Theresa May was in government. So I think the idea that it's come as a sort of lightning bolt out of the blue isn't quite right. Although, of course, there are lots of details which are yet to be discussed. Yes, I think there's frustration that no agreement can be reached with the French. And obviously, there are just so many hurdles there. And I think, to be honest, neither side has been negotiating in particularly good faith. But I think there will be a lot of people, both in government, both in Parliament and outside of it, who are quite relieved that at least something is being done. And we're hearing sort of quite a lot of Labour complaints. Yvette Cooper particularly was talking about how much it's going to cost per migrant, which is, again, not really talking about the issue in good faith, because the entire point is that it's supposed to deter people. And in that way, at least, I think it can be compared to Australia's policy, which has deterred people. So to say it costs, X million pounds per person is a bit of a nonsense, because the whole point is that fewer people will come. So yes, it's expensive, but how much more expensive will it be if this policy, if our illegal immigration just spirals further and further out of control? So I think there will be a lot of relief that tonight that something is going to be done about it. And yes, there are still huge questions about exactly how it's going to work. But I think generally Priti Patel's ratings were very low, both among Conservative voters and among the country at large. And I think this is probably going to give her a bit of a boost. She now does seem to be one of few cabinet ministers who is prepared to sort of put their neck on the line and do something quite brave and bold and different. I think the idea that it's going to sort of save Boris Johnson's skin is nonsense too. I mean, it's not a sort of safe, easy policy to just throw out and make people happy. It's going to be very difficult, and a lot of people won't like it. So I think it is at least an attempt to deal with the problem at hand. Whether it'll work, as we say, another question entirely. Yes,
Priti Patel obviously going to Kigali herself to have that meeting and that news conference with the Rwandan Foreign Minister there. We go back to, let's look at the Daily Mail as well, shall we? We'll talk about this. The PM, I won't let the left wreck Rwanda plan. There are many people, Ruth, who simply think that this will never come off, that it will be mired in the courts, that legally there are all sorts of issues about this. And the other point he made today was that pilots who bring people over will be held in jail, and the deterrent is there. Now, I guess you could see a scenario where the pilot hands the keys to the refugees and says, right, drive yourself, and you end up seeing more, very difficult circumstances in the Channel. So what do you make of the deterrent effect of this, and will that work?
I think what we haven't talked about so far is the human aspect of it, isn't it? That, none of us want to see those images. Even today, as Boris Johnson was making his speech, a baby was being carried ashore. I'm not sure anyone can imagine the choice that those people are making when they're on the coastline and trying to decide, do I get in the back of this lorry? Do I get on this boat? The comments from Boris Johnson that he will take on the army of left-wing lawyers. Lord Dubs was on Sky earlier tonight, I think, talking about how he just doesn't think this will get through. This isn't just as simple as the UK government want it to happen. They've signed a deal with the Rwandan government, and there's pictures of that. Therefore, it will happen. There's a really long way for this to go. MPs will get a say. The Lords will get a say. Lawyers will get a say. This is not an easy sell for Boris Johnson. But Labour have made the point today, and that's been a point made by Sir Keir Starmer and Wales's leader Mark Drakeford, that they do just think the reason this has come out today is that it's a cynical stunt to try and distract from Partygate. And in lots of ways, it's worked, hasn't it? It's on the front page of every paper. We're talking about it. Everyone has been talking about it, asking lots of questions. So it's a really, in that, as cynically, you'd say it's worked.
Well, many people said they did not know about it. The parish council in Linton-on-Ouse, which would have an RAF base repurposed as an asylum reception centre under these government plans, said they were not told about it. The Times, though, suggesting that the PM is in a bit of a hurry about this and wants it to start in weeks. Olivia, can you see it getting off the ground that quickly?
I think, as we've said, there are huge obstacles to it. But I think we overplay as a sort of Westminster bubble the whole dead cat strategy thing and the idea that everyone's always just trying to distract from a bigger story. The Prime Minister and the government has wanted to get ahead of this channel crossings problem for a long time now. We're now seeing an influx of Ukrainian refugees and a huge amount of pressure on both the cost of living generally and on our services. So it's not really surprising that the government now wants to get this issue in hand. And as I've said, and as we've discussed, this plan has been in the offing in some form for a while now. There's talk of Albania as an offshore processing ground. Theresa May's chief advisors were discussing it sort of years ago. So I think at least part of it is, we're now out of the kind of immediate COVID drama, and there is now just a little bit more government space to sort of talk about this and process it. I think it's true that the government's trying to sort of push it through as quickly as possible. They want that momentum behind them, and they know that there are going to be these obstacles in the law, in the Lords and in the European Court of Human Rights. So they want to show and be as bold and pushy as they can about it, which means that they probably haven't sort of jumped through all of the correct hoops. And it's, this town in Yorkshire clearly should have heard more about it before their village was just going to be used as a processing centre. But it shows this sort of government initiative, and it does feel as though the government's keen to kind of pull its socks up and get something done. And I think there's been a feeling in the air in the while now, and I talk to Conservative MPs quite a lot who sort of feel like sometimes it's not quite clear what Boris Johnson wants to do with power other than sort of hold on to it. And he gets through the kind of Partygate thing, but what's the point apart from sort of to live to fight another day? And I think this sort of shows that the government at least kind of has a plan, a policy that it wants to push through and it wants to kind of lead. So I think there will be quite a lot of people, as I say, hopefully outside of government too, but definitely inside government and parliament, who are quite relieved just to see sort of something being done and some kind of measure being pushed through and seeing a little bit of momentum behind the government here. Perhaps it will help distract from Partygate. Perhaps it won't. We all still seem to be talking about it.
Yes, we will see, won't we? Half an eye also on a prospective by-election and local elections, obviously, as well, which are interesting for the government, obviously, in power. Lots more still to come, including this story on the front page of the Telegraph business section. Elon Musk says his bid for Twitter aims to defend democracy. Discuss that in just a moment. Back to both of you. Ruth, let's head to remembering which paper it is, The Guardian, apologies, which has on its front page the news that broke about 9 o'clock this evening that the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, this Russian vessel, has in fact sunk.
Yeah, so the ship was being towed, we believe, to Crimea, and while that's been happening, it's sunk, and that's been confirmed by Russian state media. As with any story coming from Ukraine at the minute, both sides are saying different things. Ukraine is saying that it was their missiles that caused the damage. The Russians say that it was an ammunition fire. I think, as Deborah pointed out earlier on the programme, either way for the Russians, it's not great, particularly in regards to that if it is a success story for the Ukrainians. It's obviously a huge PR boost for them. This was the ship that, when it tried to get nearer Ukraine, there was some choice words, and it was sent on its way. So it's a huge PR victory for them. But the statement from the ministry has said that this cruiser ship lost its stability when it was towed to the port because of the damage to the ship's hull that it received during fire from a detonation of ammunition. So it's a huge PR coup for the Ukrainian side and the opposite for the Russians.
And just passing through, let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Telegraph, which covers the story of a British man, Aidan Aslin, originally from Newark-on-Trent in Nottinghamshire, who was seen handcuffed with a gash on his forehead and a swollen eye on Russian state television, having apparently been captured in Mariupol. Now, many people have been following his story from earlier in the week when he got in touch with his family and said he was surrounded and would have to surrender. We're not showing those pictures because of conventions on prisoners of war. Just very quickly on that, Olivia.
I mean, it's absolutely grim, and the statement from his mother is just horrible. And it's sort of the first time that the war has been brought home to Britain specifically. It's awful to see, and his mother's plea that he'll be treated with humanity. Who knows where that's going to lead? But I know we'll all be following it very closely in the days ahead.
And also staying with your paper just quickly too, business section, Elon Musk, this multi-billion-dollar bid for Twitter.
Yeah, so Elon Musk wants to save Twitter for free speech. He says he's not interested in making money from it, but he wants to make it a true platform for democracy and for free speech. It's not at all clear whether Twitter's going to accept this bid. There's already Twitter shares have plummeted. They know it's going to be a really steep uphill ride for Musk. Shares in Tesla have gone down too. So not clear whether he's going to get it, but he's got a plan and he's going to fight for it. So we'll see overnight. Yeah,
and just very quickly, I want to show everyone The Sun. It claimed a Royal World exclusive. It's now in a number of the other newspapers. Prince Harry, and Meghan jetted into the UK for a secret face-to-face meeting with both the Queen and Prince Charles, a whistle-stop tour, their first joint UK trip since they quit royal duty in March 2020. We will no doubt have more on that to come. For now, though, Ruth and Olivia, lovely to see you both. Thank you both very much indeed.